going to call this meeting to order. Thank you. The text from my husband, no link on to watch the agenda. There you go. So I'm going to call this meeting to order and welcome you all to the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Palos Verdes Estates. It is 6:33 on September 27th. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Kemps.
Here.
Councilmember McGowan.
Here.
Councilmember Murdoch.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Roos.
Here.
Mayor Losey.
Here. Thank you. So let's have an approval of the agenda, and I will tell you up front that our presentation by the South Coast Botanic Garden has been rescheduled. The presenter is ill today and opted not to come to the meeting, so we will reschedule that to probably sometime in November. Does anybody else have any changes to the agenda? And if not, can I have a motion to approve?
Is there any way that we could consider 16 earlier? Just because we've got a long agenda and we do have someone waiting for that one. I don't know if that's possible. It's the first time in new business.
It is. We have to kind of make our way through those. We also have the Athens people here on item, where are they? They're on 14. I don't know. Do you have an opinion, City Manager?
We can adjust it with the council's, if the council has that preference. And also I would request that we remove item 11 from the consent calendar. And I have a couple of comments on that item.
Oh, well, I hadn't gotten to consent yet. Hold on.
Can we move 16 and 14 up to after consent?
Gosh, I don't know how strongly you feel about it. I just feel like there's a lot of people sitting here waiting for a lot of items, and I'm sorry. Can we make our way through the public hearings, and then the golf club will be the first item of new business? Do you have another suggestion? I don't know where else to put it. Where do you want to put it?
You're referring to number 16?
Yes.
I would be comfortable with Mayor Pro Tem's recommendation to put it in consent.
Actually,
Oh, no, he wasn't
suggesting that.
after consent.
After consent?
Oh, after consent, okay. I misunderstood you.
That's fine with me, too.
Does that make sense, to take a new business item after consent, then go back to public hearings, then go back to new business?
Yep.
All right. So any other changes? And then the city manager would like to pull, I think actually you meant item number 12, didn't you?
You're correct. It's number 12.
Okay. So we're going to move item number 12 off of consent. Any other changes? Okay. Can I have
I have a question. Under the new rules, it used to be if we had questions regarding consent items, we spoke on them. Since we just moved number 12 off the consent, is this where we talk about pulling things off consent, or do we wait until we get to consent?
wait till I get to consent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, so let's see. Then may I have a motion to approve the agenda, omitting the presentation from the South Coast Botanic Garden, pulling item number 12 from consent, moving new business item number 16 ahead of the public hearings, so ahead of item number 13.
So moved.
Have a second? Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, so as you can see, we have a full agenda, so we'll try and kind of move this along here. Mayor's report, matters of community interest. I just have a couple small items. There will be a free compost event on October 8th from 8 to noon at the City Hall parking lot. And I will tell you, the last time we had this one, there was a line down the street of people getting their compost, and people said that it was good stuff. So people seem to like that event, so come on out for that. And then there will be a household hazardous waste pickup event on October 15th, and there will be more details forthcoming on that one at our next meeting. I'm going to pass it to the city manager for his report.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of items. Our summer 2022 newsletter has been published. It's on the website. We have some very good information. In addition to the items that the mayor just discussed, we have information on crime, crime information tips, how to prevent crime, do's and don'ts of tree trimming, very important, a lot of other information. So check that out on our website, pvestates.org. Second item, drought conditions remain. It's going to be with us through rainy season. Hopefully we get a lot of rain. I want to let you know that Cal Water has identified a number of customers in their service area. Palos Verdes, this area is one of the higher locations in terms of our efforts at conservation. So they're reporting an 18% reduction in water use year over year. So that's a good number. While they probably would like to see us at 30, it's better than the average within their service territory, which is just over 12%. So I want to encourage everyone to keep up the work, the good work on conservation. Most of the water savings can be achieved by reducing outdoor watering through the rest of the year. And then before I go to the police chief, I want to let the council know, and I think the council is aware of this. I received a lot of emails today, as I think the council did, related to a school district issue. And that item's not on the agenda tonight. I'd like to invite our city attorney to address that issue briefly.
Yeah, good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm David King on behalf of the City Attorney's Office. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm aware that the City Council was contacted by several residents today regarding a upcoming football game at the high school. Just so everyone's aware, there's the agreement between the city and the school district and the Homes Association, which requires the city to approve any temporary or permanent lighting pursuant to the city's municipal code and zoning code. And the city wasn't notified about this request until this afternoon. We just received a request for application today. So there's a city process, whether it's a temporary or permanent lighting. The city requires either a use permit or a lighting permit in order to allow outdoor lighting to occur after certain hours. So the city was just received a request for application today, and as part of the city's process, normally what would happen is we receive an application. The applicant then has to notify all of the homeowners that would be affected by any application within 300 feet. It's a 10-day notice period, and according to staff's calculation, for this particular request, it would implicate 116 households. And so obviously, from our point of view, there is a process. It hasn't been followed, and that's why the city was just receiving a request for application today, and that's why there's nothing on the city council agenda tonight to consider this matter. As the council is well aware, if there's nothing on the city council agenda, this is an action item. If it's not listed on the agenda, the city council cannot take any action. The council can receive public comments, but the council cannot take any action on that item tonight. And that concludes my report.
And thank you, Mr. City Attorney. And I'll turn it over to Chief Best for a brief update on the police department.
Yep. Thank you, City Manager. I'd like to welcome the public to join us next Tuesday for our Coffee with a Cop event right here at Malacove Ranch Market. We'll be there from 8 to 10 for a little bit of coffee and some conversation. There's no agenda, no topics, just an opportunity to chat with officers. So the coffee's free. It's on us. Hopefully we'll see you there. And we're going to hold another event later on in the month in Lanada Bay. So you can kind of follow us on our social media platforms or check on the city's website, and we'll push that information out. So come out next Tuesday, Malacove Ranch Market, 8 to 10. Hopefully see you all there. Thank you.
Great, that sounds like a great event. Good. take pictures, post them. Perfect. Okay, so we are going to move to communications from the public. And this portion of the agenda is reserved for comments from the public on items which are not on the agenda. Thank you. Due to state law, no action can be taken by council this evening on matters presented in this section, but the council could decide to put an item on a future agenda. So you will see on the sides of the seating is our little cards and pencils. So a few people have passed up wanting, card wanting to speak. But if you want to speak, then certainly pass a card up. Sorry, organizing. Karen Logan from PVE Neighborhood Watch, please.
Hello, Honorable Mayor, City Council. I am representing the PVE Neighborhood Watch, and my name is Karen Logan, and I'm the area coordinator for Valmonte. PVE Neighborhood Watch is a nonprofit organization that has been serving our city for over 40 years. We are pleased to collaborate with the PVEPD and their volunteer organizations on safety and disaster preparedness topics. We want to help residents to be more prepared for the unexpected situations that sometimes occur. This week, as reported by the PVEPD, we had a couple of break-ins and some prowlers in Valmonte. It's sad to have crime in our city, but it is a good wake-up call. Our tagline at PVE Neighborhood Watch is be aware, be prepared, be safe. We encourage residents to be aware for their homes and their neighbors by reporting suspicious activities to the police. I have the non-emergency phone number as a favorite on my cell phone. Whether I'm at home or on a walk, I can easily call and connect with dispatch, 310-378-4211. We encourage residents to be prepared by taking steps to ensure your family or home are ready for a disaster or an emergency. There are plenty of tips and tricks and tools and lists on the PVE Neighborhood Watch website. Finally, we encourage residents to be safe by taking advantage of the tools and tips on our website. Just the simplest things can keep your home from being an opportunity for crime. Our website, pvenw.org. Switching topics for a little bit, we want to announce some key dates as well to mark on your calendars. Tomorrow, September 28th, is National Good Neighbor Day. It's a great time to meet a neighbor you don't know or say hello to a neighbor you haven't talked to for a while. Knowing your neighbors is a key safety strategy and a way to meet the great people of our city. Secondly, our annual meeting is scheduled for Sunday, November 13th. This will be our first in-person meeting for a couple of years and a wonderful time to reconnect as a community. We are planning for an interesting speaker, election of officers, and a bit of fun. So I hope you'll mark that down, and we'll be sending out more information soon. So to find out more about safety tips, events coming up, and how to become involved in Neighborhood Watch, we ask you to go to our website, pvenw.org. We are a wonderful group of people that love working together, and we love serving our city, and we also love collaborating with our city council and police department. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you. Thanks for the great report. Laura Agnew.
Hi, I'm Laura Agnew, and I live in Lunada Bay. And recently I've been hearing quite a bit of complaining that the POA, Police Officers Association, is engaging in political activism. It kind of rang a bell with me because I didn't know if that was kosher or not. I've met all the candidates, and I don't think any of them would try to suppress freedom of speech, none of them. So I'm also wondering if maybe some of the residents don't understand that this is protected speech. So for my own curiosity, I looked it up. And it turns out that California became the first state to enact legislation specifically protecting the rights of sworn peace officers. The legislation is called the Public Safety Officers Procedural Bill of Rights Act. This was 1977. And it says in Section 3302, Section A, except as otherwise provided by law, or whenever on duty or in uniform, no public safety officer shall be prohibited from engaging or be required to engage in political activity. So it's right there, and I didn't know that either. But I thought that it might be helpful for people to understand that that is protected speech, and also remind us, I don't know about you, but I get 1 million mailers around election time from groups I've never heard of, people I don't know, et cetera, expressing their opinions to me. And it's just something that we have. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other cards for speakers? Desiree Myers.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Des Myers, and I'm running for City Council. I'm the focus of an ugly smear campaign. I just went to a meeting today, and I heard multiple people from Rancho calling us now the city of hate. I stand for honesty, integrity, and transparency. If we do not stand for these things, it will be extremely difficult to find good candidates in the future to run for city elections or to fill vacant city positions. Our employees continue to quit, and nobody's asking why. To save our police, we must solve the financial problem rather than politicizing every election cycle. Our structural deficit has grown in the last 4 years, and we're forecasted to begin cash deficits next year. Saving the police requires a financial solution, and I provide a specific 7-step solution on my website, desforpve.com, to actually save our police. On the city site, there is a January 10, 2018 video where Measure E is being decided by council. At 1 hour 23 minutes into the video, I predicted everything that's happening today. I pointed out that our financial state would become, if Measure E passed, because it did not address our structural deficit. So those things are coming true today. My quote to you will hear at the end of the video is, I support our police department. This is a management leadership issue. I want to retain our police department. Separately, I've been discussing processes and procedures. We need to report all crimes in the weekly crime report, so residents are aware of violent crimes such as the missing rapes. Our burglaries are up 200% as of 2 months ago, since 2020. We need to better communicate with residents and prepare them. I remain committed to listening to residents and representing them in the way they want to be represented. Thank you.
Thank you. And only because, oh, thank you. Is that another card for public comment? Sorry, got two. Raymond Hooker.
Hi, my name is Raymond Hooker. I live at 736 Via Del Monte. Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, for hearing me. I wanted and felt compelled to speak for our police department. I work for a small police department that faced the same discussion about contracting services during campaigns and contract negotiations. It created a huge distraction to the police department, its employees, and affected morale negatively. I watched many of my friends leave the department I worked for when the word sheriff was brought up. The word sheriff brought up in a public comment in a council meeting is like sending a round across the bow of a ship, and you're going to elicit a response. And you're going to elicit a response from a POA that represents members across members of the police department, the rank and file, which make up about 90% of our department, and they're going to reach out. We had uninformed residents weigh in, impugn the integrity of our officers, question the experience, training, our training, and despite having no expertise in law enforcement, often they would justify their ignorant opinions by stating that they had a relative or a friend who was a deputy or a police officer, and that somehow made their statements accurate or valid. I'm not surprised that our Police Officers Association is weighing in on the upcoming elections. POAs across the nation are always engaged in political campaigns and often one of the first endorsements sought by candidates for office. They do not frivolously give out endorsements, and in some cases will actively oppose candidates when a great deal is at stake. The stakes don't get much higher than the possibility of another protracted debate about our police services in this city. Members of our police department, POA, are well informed on city issues and are a primary reason we maintain our high level of safety throughout the community. Their guidance to residents should be strongly considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon Papa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. It's nice to be here. I think several of you know me, many of you don't. I've lived in the city about 3 years. I was the interim city manager. I had the honor of stepping in and learning all about the city. I'm up here because I appreciate the woman that got up and said the POA has a right to speak out. They absolutely do. 40 years in law enforcement. I was an assistant chief at the LAPD. I was chief of police in Hermosa Beach. I was president of our POA back when I was an officer back in the day. The stakes are never higher than who the leadership of the city is. And this city has been through a lot. Your police officers have been through a lot. They know a wolf in sheep's clothing when they see one. For someone to now say they support the police department when they were one of the biggest advocates for the sheriff should be viewed with suspicion. Everybody gets to make their own decision, but I think you should give credence to what your officers are cautioning you, and it doesn't pertain to any of the candidates seated at the dais, but there is another candidate who claims her newfound support of the police when she approached me when I was a new interim city manager to tell me we had a corrupt police department, that they falsified police reports, and the chief of police couldn't be trusted because he'd sweep it under the rug. I looked into her complaints. When I told her they in fact weren't true, there was nothing supported what she was claiming. She wanted to know who else she could report it to because I was sweeping it under the rug as well. I gave her the contact information for the DA's Public Integrity Division. I gave her the contact information for the Department of Justice. So now this newfound, I support the police, is pretty incredulous to me. So anyway, food for thought for those of you weighing out who you're going to vote for. Thank you.
Thank you. Joan Davidson.
Some things need to be said. Des Myers campaigned against any and all PVE parcel taxes for fire and safety since 2017. I think she needs to admit to her own record and stop making disingenuous statements about supporting the PVE police now. The loss of the 2017 tax caused us to lose $5 million. We can never make it up. Desiree campaigned against the Measure E in 2018, but we won by 70% of the votes. Myers sat on the Pension Ad Hoc Committee and agreed at the last Ad Hoc Committee meeting to raise taxes to pay its bills in February 2020. 10 days ago, I stopped at Via Picopost and asked Tom Bosler why he was putting up the Des sign since she doesn't support our police, and he said, because they're too expensive. We need the sheriffs. On September 18th, my friend Viola Selva sent me this text. Des just came to my door and said she supports the PVE police. And I asked, didn't you vote against Measure E? She said, yes, but I have a proposal that would charge an additional tax to fund the PVE police pensions. In Des's April 5th, 2018 speech at the PVRRG Town Hall against Measure E, she spoke about real estate transfer taxes and a residence tax to pay off the pension liability. This would cost every home at least $3,000 to $4,000. Many people don't have that. The state isn't asking us to pay off its liability, so it's disingenuous to contest a city measure and then say, I have a plan and I have a tax. PVE has had to pass taxes since Prop 13. There's been no way out. The LA County Fire Department contract goes up by 7% some years. But there's been one constant in this beloved city since 1923, and that's our PVE Police Department. The first police chief, Woosley, met the kids at Malaga Cove School and drove them home some days. The PVE Police serves the needs of residents, school kids, and the elderly. For 2 years, our police have been overwhelmed by COVID, handling senior services, calls to schools, and lockdowns to protect our kids. They have not wavered. They have sometimes worked 18-hour shifts during COVID. At a recent PVE forum, Myers had no answer to, what specifically have you done to support the PVE police? When we all moved here, we know why, and we need to support the city and the police. Run for council on your record. If you are on record making libelous statements claiming First Amendment rights, you need to acknowledge everyone has First Amendment rights, even the police. Its disingenuous statements do not go unnoticed. They're in writing on the Nextdoor rants and the PVE City Council meeting video for the last 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So let's move on to consent agenda items. That's 1 to 11, because number 12 was removed. Are there any other items to be removed or discussed, or comments or questions? So to answer your earlier question, you get minor questions.
Okay.
And if it's more than a minor clarifying question, it needs to be pulled.
I'd like to pull items number 5 and 11, please.
5 and 11? Anybody else? Okay. So I'm going to take public comment on the consent agenda items. I don't have any cards. Did anyone? Oh, I have a card. Okay, that item was pulled, so I'm going to hang on to that. I don't have any cards for any public comment on any of the other items. Not seeing any hands raised. Okay, so may I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. So let's go to item number 5, consideration of amendment number 1 to the professional service agreement for project approval, environmental documentation, and plan specifications and estimate services for Phase 1, Palos Verdes Drive West Corridor Improvements Project with Michael Baker International in an amount of $20,430 for a total not to exceed contract amount of $755,569 and a budget appropriation of $20,430. Staff report, please.
It may be helpful to understand what specific question we can answer.
Yes, my concern is regarding payment of the additional public meetings.
So in the original agreement with MBI, it called for 2 public meetings. 2 public meetings, and they participated in additional public meetings. I think the original contract probably was a little short, should have been more. So they did participate. It is an eligible expense under the reimbursement process with Metro. And what we wanted to do is document that in an amendment, not request reimbursement without amending the agreement first.
So my take on this is MBI knew robust community engagement was going to be required for a project of this size. They underscoped. They only budgeted 2. They knew it was going to require more. Then they came back to us asking for more money. Part of the reason why we needed the additional meetings was that they weren't answering the questions that were brought up in the previous meetings. So they created the situation that required additional meetings. As a career consultant, I know sometimes you have to do extra meetings for your clients. That's just part of the business. It's part of being a taking care of client relationships and managing them and partnering with them. And for them to come back and nickel and dime us on these few meetings, I just think is unprofessional.
Any other comments?
Mr. Peshwich, could you describe the conversation that you had with Eric Spangler relative to the meeting that you invited him to in which the council was considering the status of the roundabout at our last special meeting?
I'll try to remember try to remember the conversation to the best of my ability. It was my expectation that since the project was being brought forward, that it would be reasonable and appropriate for Mr. Spengler to attend the meeting. He requested that that city would eventually, he requested an amendment. He said it wasn't in the scope for him to participate in an additional public meeting. I indicated that regardless of that, it seemed appropriate for him to be there and to be available to answer any questions, that most of the work preceding that would be done by the staff. And in fact, if you remember, the staff presented that night. Mr. Spengler was available to answer questions, but most of the prep that was done for that meeting was at the staff level. So he eventually did indicate that he would attend. And so shortly before, maybe in the day or two or three before the meeting, he did confirm that he would be in attendance.
And the charge to the city for his attendance of that meeting for a couple of hours, as I recall, was approximately how much?
I believe it was 5 hours of time on the invoice, and I'm forgetting the dollar amount per hour.
$1,320, as I recall. Okay, and then one other point that I just want to validate with staff for the benefit of the public. Item number 5 that we're currently discussing involves Michael Baker International, and then just to clarify, item number 12 that we'll be discussing later is in fact the same organization, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, that's all.
David? Anything to add?
My question is, how do I reconcile between the $20,000 incremental budget apportionment and the roughly $1,000 that Councilmember Kemp's just referenced?
I'm not sure I understood the first part of your question.
Well, the increased budget appropriation of $20,000, how does that break down? Because it's more than just the meeting that was held at your request.
Right. There are 3 elements to it. And I'm looking at the number. Thank you for zooming in a little. There are traffic counts. That was a little over $10,000. The outreach meetings were $8,900, and one additional, the project update meeting was an additional $1,350.
So I'm not questioning the traffic counts, which is about 10,100. It's the other 10,000.
And how much have we paid them so far? 2 something?
295.
260, 295?
Okay.
So, do you have a comment, Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I just have a question. So the meetings that are encompassed in item 2.0, these were back in March. Why are they just asking for this amendment now?
There were a couple of items that have been pending for a while in terms of an amendment, and from a timing perspective, we just hadn't brought them forward. And so the 2 meetings, Anastasia is assisting me here. The 2 meetings that they indicate were out of scope were the March 9th public meeting, number 2, and the June 2nd City Council meeting. That was the update meeting that you received on the 35% design.
Right, they had to have known they were going to attend a meeting to give us a 35% design.
Again, I think that sort of underscores my earlier comment that there wasn't a lot of thought in terms of the future public engagement needs of the organization.
So we've basically told them their services are no longer needed on this project, correct?
Yes.
They handed us a bill. We've paid them $290, and they hand us a bill for $20. We maybe don't dispute 10 of it. So I say we go back, and we say we'll split it with you and call it a day.
And I agree, and I actually would like to add something to that, which is I don't think we should do all of our final payment until we've made sure that we've received all the final work product from them. There are still presentation materials pages that they showed out, separate pages that they would bring into play. There was a primer they did with the Traffic Safety Committee meeting, November, December. We need all work product before the relationship is over and we've paid the final bill.
Could staff also note that there were 2 meetings with the art jury, I believe, that were referenced in the staff report just relative to the work product question.
So I think we're not approving this amendment, and we're giving you direction to go do a couple more things and then bring it back. Is that correct?
Or as an alternative, would you authorize a portion of the payment rather than the full amount? And we
So
could...
they don't have, so you don't have to come back? Are you comfortable with that?
It ends up being basically half, because 10,100 was the traffic counts, and then about 10,000, I don't know what the hundreds were for the meeting. So that would indeed achieve what you had suggested.
And we could make sure that we obtain the work product before we issue the check.
I would move that.
So, the 10,100? We're going to pay them 10,100?
Yep.
Okay. Would you want to make a motion for that?
I move that we pay the 10,100 for the additional traffic counts, and that we not make the payments until we've received all work product, including spreadsheets, pages, graphics, et cetera, from all their meetings.
Can I suggest that we amend that just a little bit so that we authorize the payment subject to their accepting the fact that the other line items are not billable to us? They have to accept that. I mean, I don't want this. I don't want our direction to be that we're going to pay them and then we're
come back and ask for another.
And
ask
then
again for the 10.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Accepted.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
I'll
can I have
second.
a second then.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Thank you. Motion carries. Okay. So that's number 5. Number 11. Okay. Consideration of discontinuing work on a roundabout design for the Palos Verdes Drive West Corridor Improvements Project. And I think you pulled that as well, Councilmember Murdoch. Do you want to say
Yes.
a little bit about why you pulled that?
Yes, so at the August 22nd meeting, a number of council members talked about, in hindsight, the perhaps not wisest decision to bifurcate the triangle intersection from Via Corda, and that because they really do, they're interdependent and they act as a system. And so my request is really just a friendly amendment to replace the word intersection, which references Via Corda, and replace it with PV Drive West Corridor. So it would say, in consultation with Mayor Victoria Lozzi and Council Member Michael Kemps, prepare recommendations related to project implications improving the PV Drive West Corridor's performance, Traffic Safety Committee involvement and community engagement, and present the information at a future city council meeting for the city council's consideration.
Okay. Okay, pretty straightforward. And I have one speaker on this one, Karen Logan.
One quick question, she's walking up. The written recommendation in the staff report doesn't reference the Traffic Safety Committee. Councilmember Murdoch did do that. So,
It was in the motion, it wasn't in the recommendation.
right.
Oh. Gotcha.
In the motion, in the staff report.
Sorry, 1 second, Ms. Logan. Okay.
Councilmember Kemps, in the recommendation at the bottom of the staff report, we did include a reference to the Traffic Safety Committee, but it is not addressed in the title and subject of the agenda item.
Oh, it's on the on the recommended motion at the end, but it's not on the recommendation on the first page.
Correct.
Gotcha, with you. Okay. Ms. Logan, thank you, sorry.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor, City Council, my name is Karen Logan. I'm speaking as a private resident living on Via Anita. I wanted to take this time to express my thanks to the City Council and the city staff for their work on proactively looking for a solution for our city on this traffic issue. I've attended nearly all the meetings and felt that they've been really informative. And as I observed the evolution of the meetings, it felt like the plan was being refined as more and more information was presented through the information through the engineers and also through public feedback. I specifically note that the City Council's pursuit of external funding sources, and that was one of that the taxpayers have already paid into, and I really appreciate the proactive approach of finding a funding solution in this manner, because we are kind of strapped for finances, so thank you for that. Throughout the entire length of this process, I observe your diligence to listen to public comments, and you know, you've mentioned that you've been reading all of the letters that have come in and that have been submitted through the months of this process. It seems like the position of the resident feedback has shifted as more residents have become aware and then engaged in the civic process. So I appreciate your listening, your shifting. You know, it's all a learning process. I feel like you've been trying to work really hard, and I just wanted to say thank you for that work and for your volunteerism and your diligence. I mean, you're all residents, you love our city, which I get, and I appreciate that you're trying to practically apply solutions to our city where you think it's best needed. It may not have been the right solution at the right time, but I think it was pursued in good faith in the spirit of resolving a perceived issue in our community. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Speak for everyone and say you're welcome. Okay, item number 12. Oh, sorry, we're not done with 11. Sorry, bring that back. Do I have a motion to amend the recommendation with Councilmember Murdoch's changed language?
I move that we replace intersection with PV Drive West Corridor.
Second, anybody?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, great. Any opposed? Okay. That motion passes. So item number 12. Item number 12, and I'm so sorry, Mr. Mott, that item number 11 was closed already. I'm sorry. Item number 12, consideration of amendment number 3 in the amount of $216,000 between City of Palos Verdes Estates and Michael Baker International to provide professional contract planning services through fiscal year 22-23 in support of the Community Development Department for a total not to exceed amount of $496,000. The city manager requested that we pull that item because I think he needed to make some clarifications on his alternatives presented.
That's correct, and thank you, Mayor, for that introduction. This report addresses staffing challenges within the planning department. We have 2 employees. One is away on leave, and we're supplementing the hours of that person and the vacant position that we have had a recent unsuccessful recruitment for. We did not advance any individual to an interview. We are supplementing that with staffing from MBI. And the current staffing levels are essentially 20% lower than what we would otherwise have with 3 full-time employees. So we're already down a little bit in terms of staff capacity. The amendment as it's presented tonight would sustain that existing service level, so down 20 hours a week, through the remainder of the fiscal year. What that does is increase even accounting for offsetting salary savings, there's a subsidy of the city that's needed to support this. So there is a second alternative motion, and in working with our interim community development director, we have presented another option which would reduce by 1 day a week the work of one of the planners. And so this would reduce the cost by about $33,000. So just want to bring your attention to that. It would reduce our staffing levels by about 20%, 27% in terms of available planning staff hours. And in a recent conversation with one of our council members, I think there may be some other ideas that a council member may have regarding how to address some of the extra costs this year that are attributable to the use of consulting services. So I'll pause there, and if you'd like me to elaborate more on that, I will.
Any comments?
Yes, so I'm glad that our city manager pulled this item. You know, for me, on this topic, you know, when we first authorized these funds, it was not to exceed $100,000, and it was because we were in a pinch. And now, almost a year later, we're getting to a significantly higher number. And so for me, the primary issues are twofold. The first is the contract planner costs us significantly more than our own staff, and we're not recovering full cost. And so what's happening is residents are paying the cost for those that are doing remodeling, and I think we need to quickly update our fee schedule to reflect these contractor costs, because this has been going on for too long. The second item is, you know, as Mark mentioned, the market's changed. The world has changed. It's harder and harder to find planners, right? You've got RPVs trying to find 2 people. Manhattan Beach is trying to find someone. One of the other peninsula cities is trying to find one. We've got issues with backlog, with continuances, and I think it's important that we find a way to figure out what's going to be a sustainable model. This is a key service that we provide our residents. This is like the number one service, other than policing, that we provide. And so we need to make sure that we're finding a way that's sustainable for staff, and that's sustainable for our residents, and that indeed the full cost is being borne by those doing the work and coming to us with projects that require continuances and costs. And we just need to make sure we're capturing all the costs. Those are my 2 issues.
Yeah, I mean, I would say to kind of latch on to that, I mean, when you talk about service to residents, to me, it's not worth saving $33,000, which is a small number given our budget, until we've got this backlog worked. I mean, we did a search for a planner, as you mentioned, apparently hot commodity these days. So it's not like we're not trying to hire someone. We did a search. We didn't have any candidates that we thought would provide the level of service that we want in this city. So I would go with the recommended motion, because I just don't think skimping $33,000 to cut staff at a time when our backlog is huge and we have constant continuances, and I would go with the recommended motion myself. Anybody else?
I'll triple down on everything that Dawn said, so I won't repeat it. I couldn't possibly agree more. We have a constant disconnect between what the actual cost is for this, forget whether it's contracted or whether it's, you know, employees with all baked-in pension costs, and what we actually charge for services. And we have to figure out a way to mirror that up. I understand, and I'll say this for the benefit of the public, that there is a disconnect between how much you can charge for services and recapture as compared to what the staffing costs are. But I think we need to make an effort to make that as close as reasonably possible. And then I don't know whether we need to look at other recruiting angles, other contract firms. I'm sorry, but I made the connection between 5 and 12 because I'm so thoroughly dissatisfied with MBI, and I'm happy to go on the record and say it. I am very, very frustrated with them, and I understand that there is a disconnect between, or a difference between professional services provided relative to the item number 5 and this one. But I think the reality, to compare and contrast, and it's why I made some of the comments I did earlier in the meeting that we had with Athens, which was prior to this council meeting, it was a special meeting, was when you look at Athens, we really have a partnership with a vendor. And we have a vendor that is proactive and that cares and that invests in our city. We need that desperately with planning. Staff is doing everything they possibly can, and then we're supplementing with this. And I just desperately feel like I wish that we had a better partner. And so whether it's staffing in a different way, whether it's, seeking alternatives, I certainly am not going to get in the way of this because we need to continue and to echo Victoria's comments, I agree with those. But rather than continuing to hit these points where the costs just simply need to change and we need to adjust, we need to structurally look at this and edit what we're doing going forward. So I guess I would say, please provide us with your guidance and your feedback, and let's work together and solve it, as opposed to just simply going through contract amendments.
So I agree with a lot of what Don was saying. I think that if we need to revisit the fee structure, we should do that with haste. But my preference is the recommended motion to ensure that the public gets the level of service that they need.
And I will agree with, I think we ought to go with the original motion, but let me just make a couple of comments about the fee structure in revisiting that. I fully subscribe to that. I think we need to fully recover our costs incurred for all of these activities, whether it be planning or other activities within the city. Unfortunately, we have a finance staff that is understaffed at the moment. We have an antiquated accounting system, and it makes that task that much more difficult to accomplish. And we've got all these number one priorities, and this has got to be put right up on the top. I fully agree with that. But I want the public to understand that we are operating at a significant disadvantage because we don't have the adequate systems and staffing levels that we need to do to run this city properly. I will very much support Mayor Losi's recommendation that we adopt the full original proposal, including the $32,000. And I would also encourage our city manager to continue to provide his expert leadership in trying to help us work our way through this collage of hiring, market demands, fiscal responsibilities, and everything that gets melded together. It's not a simple solution.
Okay.
I think the one thing that I forgot to say in my early comment, so I don't support the
alternative,
the
reduced
decrease. I mean, we're already understaffed. So for me, it was more about making sure that we've got the fee structure. And I don't think it's actually quite as complicated to do, at least in this area, because we've got basically the spreadsheet that ClearSource did when they did the original fee study. So there'll be some work with, staff to make sure that we factored in the continuances that seem to be happening in the hours. But I appreciate, yes, we are understaffed. I think this is important. The other piece of it, though, is as I sit and I watch Planning Commission meetings, my guess is our experts, our planning staff, and our planning commissioners know what are the things that lead to the inefficiencies that are in the system. What are the things they have to continually address, whether it's storage, space, height, whether it's setbacks and all of that. And if there was some way to bring our experts together to identify the 5 to 10 things that might provide some efficiency improvements and make their jobs easier, I think you get some benefit, and that will help work off the backlog. So.
Okay. All right, all good comments.
I'll move it if you like.
Thank you, please.
I move that we execute the amendment number 3 in the amount of $216,000 between the City of Palos Verdes Estates and Michael Baker International MBI to provide professional services, professional contract planning services through fiscal year 2022-23 in support of the Community Development Department for a total not to exceed contract amount of $496,000.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Okay.
So are we not going to make any movement regarding full cost recovery or trying to set a goal for that?
I think that's all direction.
it's already-
Staff
We've
direction
all
has
given
been
staff
provided.
direction. I think we've been clear.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay. So then we moved, new business item number 16 is going to be next. So as I always do, I will tell you that I, under duress, recuse myself, because I think because it's a ridiculous practice. It's not a rule. I have no conflict of interest on this item, but I am a member of the golf club, so I will recuse, and don't touch my gavel. Somebody remember to come get me when it's over.
From here.
Was the mayor pro tem left-handed?
I see you touching my gavel.
Happy to provide a brief introduction of this item. So this is the action requested is to approve a resolution authorizing use of the golf club the golf course premises by the golf club for hosting an LPGA tournament from April 25th through May 1st, 2023, subject to conditions satisfactory to the city manager. And essentially, in short, this is the same golf tournament that we successfully hosted in earlier this year. And the golf club, in partnership with Outlier, the firm that assists them in producing this tournament, have had successful negotiations and are looking forward to coming back to Palos Verdes in 23. And then also in their conversations, they have talked about an additional 2 years to bring this tournament back in 24 and 25 as well. The city's concession agreement requires authorization from the city in writing in order to use the premises for something other than the golf club normally provides the golf course for. So for that reason, this resolution is brought forward for your approval today. We did not have time to document all the conditions, and last year there were a number of meetings that occurred between the police department, public works, other departments, fire department, about conditions that we would work with the tournament producer with and on. We anticipate taking the lessons learned from last year and probably following a number of the same recommendations, because I think we had it I think we dialed it in pretty well, but there may be some adjustments that we'll make that are fairly minor. And in addition to that, there is a fiscal impact section in the report that just documents some of the extra revenues that the city would receive from hosting this tournament. So that's important not to overlook. And I know there are representatives of the golf club here today who've been part of those discussions with Outlier, and you may have questions for them as well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Questions for staff, or we have Dave Klein? Yeah, go ahead.
I have one. I guess my main question is what, if anything, is different between this upcoming one and the one that we just had, other than that there'll be a donation to the city of $40,000 instead of $15,000? What other differences are there?
The only other difference would be that there's an increased fee to the club for work incurred, overtime work, and fertilizer, gypsum, all of the materials that are needed in order to put the tournament on. But besides that, the $40,000, it's a $25,000 increase in the donation from $15,000 last year. And one correction, the tournament will be held the last week of March. The dates that the city manager referenced were the dates that the tournament was held this year. In 2023, it'll be the last week of March.
So your expectation is that you'd operate it the same as you did this year, and the city would get its same 10% of this and 10% of that and 10% of that? And
yes, that's correct.
Full cost recovery?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Could you briefly address for us, sorry we didn't prepare you for this, could you briefly address for us the summary that you provide? I don't need exact numbers, but could you summarize for members of the public the survey that was conducted post the prior survey, the prior tournament, the level of satisfaction amongst residents and golf club members, and sort of just briefly talk about that?
We did a survey internally for the membership, within the membership of the golf club, 600 members, 70 90+% of which are residents of PVE, and asked them if they enjoyed the tournament. 90+% said that they enjoyed having the tournament at the club. We asked them another question, would they like to see it come back again in 2023? And 90% said that they would like to see the tournament come back. So overwhelming support from the membership.
Okay. And then this agreement in Section 21 covers the $40,000 additional donation to the city directly. Could you also address discussions that liaisons and you have had relative to potential additional years and what those would involve?
There's the option on both sides with Outlier, the organizer for the LPGA, and with the golf club and the city, to increase their donations should we all decide that we want to do the tournament again in 2024 and 2025. And those donations to the city would go from $40,000 in 2023 to $65,000 in 2024 to $90,000 in 2025.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
All right. I will just say both Councilmember Kemps and I have had a great pleasure of working with the golf club this past year. I think we've developed a fantastic partnership. This was an outstanding event this year. The impact to the community was very limited, but the value that it brought, the prestige it brought to the club and to the city is outstanding. Could not be more excited to have Outlier and the LPGA back next year, and very glad that you guys were able to do this. Thank you very much. So,
thank you for doubling down on your commitment. We're very appreciative.
Can I make a Sir Mayor Pro Tem? I wanted to say anyway.
Sir Mayor Pro Tem. Wow.
Well, you say Madam Mayor. I'd like to make a motion if that's okay.
You may.
I move that we approve the resolution authorizing the use of premises for LPGA tournament during the last week of March of 2023, subject to conditions satisfactory to the city manager.
I'll second it.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Can we get the mayor back?
Somebody want to bring the mayor her gavel?
How'd it go?
We're done.
Oh, we passed it.
Okay, very good. So I have to reset up. Alrighty. So, did that item pass?
It did.
Cool. All right. Okay, so let's move on to public hearings. We're going to take item number 13, which is consideration of an ordinance of the City of Palos Verdes Estates amending Chapter 13.08, Storm Drains and Stormwater Management and Pollution Control, the City of Palos Verdes Estates Municipal Code. And may we have the staff report on that, please?
Thank you. So tonight we're here to introduce on the first reading the ordinance for the Storm Drains and Stormwater Management and Pollution Control. The City of Palos Verdes Estates, along with LA County Flood Control District, and 84 other incorporated cities within the coastal watersheds of LA County, are subject to waste discharge requirements in a regional stormwater permit. The permit identifies conditions, requirements, and programs that municipalities must implement to protect regional water resources. And as part of this, the permit was updated to replace a previous regional permit in 2012 and was fully adopted in July of 2021 with an effective date in September 2021. So now, in order to become in compliant with the new requirements that have gone into effect, we're updating the current ordinance we have, and the proposed ordinance includes changes such as some definitions, modifying prohibitions of illegal discharges or connections to storm drains, modifying requirements for industrial, commercial, or construction activities, modifying planning and land development program requirements for new development and redevelopment projects, and then also adding follow-up inspections to the enforcement options for failed inspections. And that includes my staff report.
Great. Any questions, comments? I have no cards on this. Did any members of the public wish to speak on this item? No. Okay. So,
For the benefit of the public, we covered this at the last meeting, so it's not that council's not
Asleep at the
interested.
switch?
okay, someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I'll move that we'll introduce on first reading by title only proposed ordinance number 22-blank, an ordinance of the City of Palos Verdes Estates amending Chapter 13.08, storm drains and stormwater management and pollution control of the City of Palos Verdes Estates Municipal Code.
Second?
Great, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want a roll call vote on this? I don't know.
Do we need a roll call vote on a public hearing? No, I don't think so, right? Any opposed? Okay, that motion carries. Okay, item number 14, consideration of an ordinance of the City of Palos Verdes Estates amending Chapter 8.18, mandatory commercial and multifamily recycling of Title 8, health and safety of the City of Palos Verdes, I should say Estates, Municipal Code. May we have a staff report on that one?
Thank you. So this again is another first reading by title only for an ordinance, this time for Chapter 8.18 related to commercial multifamily recycling. In 2016, Senate Bill 1383 was adopted and signed into law, which incorporated and built upon previous regulations to reduce materials going to landfills and the amount of greenhouse gases being released into the atmosphere from decomposing organic waste. This bill included a lot of the requirements that people are becoming more familiar with composting and putting that in your green waste. In November of 2020, CalRecycle released comprehensive regulations for the implementation of that Senate bill, which required municipalities to incorporate into their municipal codes the requirements from the Senate bill and to enforce them at a local level. So tonight we're here to update the ordinance to incorporate these requirements and the enforcement. The changes include definitions, requirements for single-family waste generators, also with commercial businesses that includes multifamily properties with 5 dwellings or more. It has waivers for generators as well as provisions for special events, hauling, commercial food generators, food recovery programs, and then it has new provisions with relation to inspections, investigations, and penalties. That concludes my staff report.
Okay. So I think we also have members of our partners from Athens that look like they're available for questions as well. So do we have, anybody have any questions at this point? No? Comments? Do you, Michael?
Yeah, again, we had a pre-meeting with Athens relative to that in 1383, so I don't.
Okay.
And I just would like to thank staff for such a comprehensive ordinance. I mean, this, if you look at the red line, this was a heavy red line. So thank you for all the effort in making this current with what we need.
Okay. Okay, so can I have a motion on that one?
I'll move it. Did we, let me get the exact wording. I'll move that we accept as a first reading proposed ordinance 22-whatever, an ordinance of the City of Palos Verdes Estates amending Chapter 8.18, mandatory commercial and multifamily recycling of Title 8, health and safety of the City of Palos Verdes Estates Municipal Code.
Just a friendly amendment we're introducing on first reading by title only.
by title only. Thank you.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, good. Okay. So item number 15 is a public hearing, appeal of Planning Commission denial of 1520 Paseo La Cresta. Give us a second to get this up. Hold on. And okay, so just for the benefit of the public and so people kind of know how this goes, so we will hear a staff report on this item, and then I'll ask for disclosures in a second. We'll open the public hearing. The appellant will have 5 minutes. We'll hear public comment. I have a few cards here. If you want to speak on this item, send the card up. So each speaker gets 3 minutes, and then the appellant gets the last 5 minutes. And then I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for deliberations. So I do just want to ask the city council members, did anybody learn anything that wasn't publicly disclosed or already in the public record?
No.
I visited the subject property and the several neighboring properties.
As did I.
As did I.
Sorry, so did I. I don't know. That's
but
what
that's
you
not
meant.
really a disclosure,
Yeah.
but thank you.
Okay.
So, okay, good. So may we have the staff report, please?
Thank you. Mayor and members of the City Council, the application before you is an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision to deny a neighborhood compatibility and grading permit application for a new single-family resident at 1520 Paseo La Cresta. The Planning Commission heard this application at their July 19th meeting. At the meeting, the public concerns focused on privacy and view impact issues. The Planning Commission agreed with the public's concern and also voiced concerns regarding the home ridge and plate heights and placement and its orientation on the subject site. Grading was also discussed by the Planning Commission as a tool to mitigate view impacts. At the conclusion of the meeting, the Planning Commission felt that the size of the project site affords the applicant with options. They also made clear that they were not ready to make a decision and offered the applicant a continuance to their September Planning Commission meeting. The continuance was also offered multiple times. The applicant did request the Planning Commission to make a decision. Therefore, the Planning Commission denied the application as is. The appeal application is contained as Exhibit B. Staff supports and recommends that the City Council uphold the Planning Commission's decision to deny the neighborhood compatibility and grading permit applications for a new single-family residence. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. So before I open the public hearing, does anybody have any clarifying questions for staff?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to open the public hearing. So I know from the appellant side, there's 3 of you, so you can divvy up the time however you want, but together you have 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. I'm Paul Perlson. Glad to see in-person meetings again, by the way. I'm the attorney for the applicant appellant, Alok Mandel. Alok, raise your hand. Sitting next to him is the lead designer on the project, Jennifer Siegel. With all due respect, the staff report that was just read does not really paint an accurate picture. The Planning Commission did state that they wanted to go back and have us resubmit after we already got approval from the art jury. However, the bottom line is that their options that they provided, which they claimed would afford better view access to the neighbors, really doesn't hold up. These options that they expressed were supposedly, A, somehow we could further reduce the height of the proposed home at its presently proposed location, or B, move the proposed home down the lot's extremely steep hill closer to the street, or C, reconfiguring the proposed home at its presently proposed location. However, in describing this, the staff report completely disregards, with all due respect, all of the law and evidence that we have presented not only to the Planning Commission, but here in our appeal, all of which conclusively shows that none of these options are actually possible. Furthermore, this evidence also conclusively shows that the denial of this application would also violate the requirements of the Neighborhood Compatibility Ordinance itself, as well as the Federal Americans with Disabilities Act. I know that the opposing neighbor's attorney has just submitted, I think today, a letter claiming that the ADA does not apply, which again, with all due respect, is completely wrong, and we can address that in our rebuttal. As far as the ordinance itself, it's clear from the ordinance that a proposed home be designed, as you know, and developed in a manner to the extent reasonably practicable, so it does not unreasonably interfere with neighbors' existing views. As far as I'll briefly now go into my letter and the declarations. I've heard that you've all read them. They're extensive. But I would just like to highlight what the planning commissioners actually said about these supposed options. By the way, all of them stated that they love the design. None of them could say how any of these options could actually be accomplished. What they actually said was, for example, one of them said, quote, "I don't know, I'm not an architect, so I can't tell you how this can be done," close quote. Another of them said, quote, "I don't know the answer. That's why you are," meaning Ms. Siegel, "are the architect, and you can figure all these things out," close quote. The other one said, I always try to be as specific as possible. I don't really have that here, unfortunately, on this particular project. The commissioners could not say how this could be done, because it cannot be done. Based on all of the conclusive evidence that we've supplied, both legally and the declarations of the architects on the project under penalty of perjury. As shown in detail in these declarations, if the failure to approve this application did not violate the ADA, which it does, this is already a modest one-story home that was specifically designed proactively to minimize as much as possible any view impairment, which is not significant, or any privacy impairment, which there is absolutely none. As also shown conclusively by these declarations, these supposed options cannot be accomplished for numerous reasons. Along with setback restrictions and retaining wall height restrictions, one of the most significant reasons that we've pointed out is that the massive additional grading and excavation of soil that would be required would create a substantial degree of personal injury and property damage, resulting from to not only to this lot, but the surrounding lots as well. This is as a result of potential landslides and erosion from excessive stormwater drainage that result from the substantial change to the natural cross-lot water drainage that presently exists at these lots.
Sorry, Mr. Perlson, you're way over. Sorry, I need you to wrap up. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay. So let's go with Bang Pham.
Hello, all. Yeah. My name is Ben Pham, and I'm living in 1425 Yako, next to the proposed construction. So this construction is too high and obstructing almost 90% up on my views, my ocean views. Number one. Because it is too high, it looked into my privacy. I have no more privacy if this construction is approved. From our master bedroom, our bathroom, our spa, our kitchen. And there's one thing to talk about during the neighborhood meeting. Those people pretend to come to our house because we raised a concern. And they came and took some picture from the different angle and works upon. They post in to the public, to the city, so that the people have the wrong idea about the building. That is all I want to mention. So they have the right to build the house, but they have no right to invade our privacy, to block our view, and, to distort the truth. I'm done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dolly Pham.
Good evening. My name is Dolly Pham. I'm at 1425 Via Arco. We are adjacent to the proposed project. For 16 years, we have enjoyed the unobstructed ocean view from the majority of our rooms. We paid millions of dollars for this view. We love our home, we plan to retire here, and we give this home to our children and grandchildren. The proposed project is way too high and have severe ocean and privacy impacts on our home. At the neighborhood meeting in May, we indicated our concerns to the applicant, his designer, and lawyer, and asked that the overall ridge height be lowered by at least 12 feet to mitigate the impacts. As of today, the applicant and his team have not provided any proposed changes to the original plan that was given to us at the neighborhood meeting. Instead, they presented letters with litigation threats, along with deceptive, distorted, dishonest photos taken during their brief home visits to support their claims of no or insignificant impacts. At the neighborhood meeting, the applicant refused to take our contact information, stating that he would deal with the Planning Commission. At the planning hearing, he declined the commissioner's several offers for continuance, so he could promptly appeal to the council. The applicant's manipulative behavior is made clear right from the beginning. Bringing a lawyer and an elderly stepmother to the neighborhood meeting, disregarding neighbors' concerns, bypassing Planning Commission in order to promptly appeal to the council. Permitting this type of behavior will set a very poor precedent for future neighborhood meetings and planning hearings, and may overwhelm council with unnecessary appeals. Consequently, we respectfully ask that council uphold the denial by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Pham. Eric Chang.
He just has slides he'd like to show.
Okay, do you have them? Okay.
I guess I also emailed.
Yep, hang on.
Oh, okay.
Hang on one second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is this first in item 17 on the IT report?
Should be. might take a little bit of warm up, maybe. Or.
Is it coming up? Do you want me to take a different speaker while we're coming? Okay.
Okay, no, that sounds good.
Hold on, sit tight.
Okay.
Mayor, we did want to give the council, I'm sorry I didn't make copies, but if you guys need to pass it, this is Dolly's correspondence. We realized on the scan that the photos aren't as clear when she was speaking, so Cheryl grabbed it, and if you guys wanted to look at it.
Okay. Okay. Is that your slide?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we have
here we
3
go.
pages,
Thank
but
you.
I
Thank
guess
you
I
for
can
your
let you know once we can go to the second page. Okay. Hi, Honorable City Council. I'm Eric Chang, and I'm representing 1600 Paseo La Cresta, which is 2 houses down from the proposed home. And I have been effectively a resident of Palos Verdes Estates for 40 years, and at this current address for the past 32 years as well. And we are opposing the current proposed home as is and request that the City Council uphold the current denial of the from the Planning Commission on 2 grounds: view impacts and privacy. And on my first slide, you can see I was trying to show our home is to the right and a little bit to the back of the home. And at current present, our grading is a little bit higher. So from what we can see, we can effectively see the entire backyard of their home at the current elevation, which is why for us, we're requesting that the overall ridge height of the home be reduced. We think 12 feet or more is appropriate in this case because we can see this from our second floor, and also from our 3rd story bedrooms as well. And if this ridge height could be reduced, it would greatly mitigate effectively our concerns, and I actually think probably many of our neighbors' concerns as well. And also, there is a slight view impact. Although this doesn't affect our primary ocean view, we do have a secondary view corridor where we do see part of the mountains and city view as well, which is, it's a little hard to see maybe from page 2. It's a little hard to see from the pictures. Well, actually, this is back to the privacy part. They have a very beautiful backyard, which they've designed, and it's a very open backyard, so we would see, this is what we can easily see from our kitchen and master bedrooms and living rooms as well. But going back to the view impacts, we do have small corridors on probably page 3 that are affected, but it's a little hard to see. But we can see the city and mountain views, which would be more or less eliminated on our right side of the home. And again, we do feel that if the home were lowered, that would either massively mitigate or eliminate our concerns there. And our main issue is obviously with current design, it's a 1-story house built effectively at grade. And we see no reason why it can't be lowered. There's no buildable lot in front of the home. It is 100% unobstructed ocean view. They have an amazing view regardless of what height and elevation it's built at. And obviously when our home was built, we have about 15-foot retaining walls. And even a new house that's being built 3 houses down currently has about 20-foot retaining walls as well. So I think it's inaccurate that what the applicant says might cause mudslides or flooding, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Bob Vasey.
Good evening. I'm Bob Vasey, 48-year resident of 1421 Via Arco. The silhouettes clearly demonstrate the major view impact on the neighbors and is not insignificant as the applicants state. The photographs presented by the applicant have been altered and do not represent the true impact. Chairman Wade said to the designer, quote, "Sadly, the pictures I took don't look like the pictures you took. I know what I saw. The impacts are much more substantial," end of quote. The first we knew of this project was when the silhouettes went up. The applicant had made no effort to meet the neighbors to discuss the proposed project. The only meeting we had was a required neighborhood compatibility meeting just prior to their submittal. At that meeting, their attorney was present, and the meeting was more of a legal nature with veiled legal threats regarding ADA. This pattern of legal intimidation has continued through the Planning Commission meeting. The applicants consistently state they cannot move the house further down the hill. The Neighborhood Compatibility Ordinance under the Natural Amenities section states, grading may be desirable under a proposed house in order to mitigate a view impact. It also states it is also recognized that grading can be an effective tool to mitigate impacts to views. Commissioner Nendek mentioned these factors in her remarks. Most homes on Paseo La Cresta have had major grading, including the Changs and the Phams. Currently, a house is being built next to the Changs, 3 lots from the applicant. This lot is similar to the applicant's in that it overlooks parkland and its view can never be blocked. This home was approved 2 years ago after twice having been moved further down the hill. There is a cut of approximately 20 feet to lower it and help preserve the neighboring views. Grading is currently underway in that house. The neighbors affected by the applicant's property suggest a drop of 12 feet or 12 plus feet to help preserve view. Since the applicant's lot drops 27 feet, this is feasible to do. There is also the ability to reduce the plate height both on the main level and the garage level. The plate height on the main level at one point is 12 and a half feet. Commissioner Lazaro also mentioned the possibility of working with the art jury to reduce the 35-foot setback. There have been no known drainage or slide issues in the city due to the grading. The ocean views are important to all 3 neighbors. The negative impact on our views is unnecessary and with changes could be mitigated. We urge the council to deny this appeal. The applicant could reconsider later and submit a new project not so intrusive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vacy. Lenore Vacy. And that's my last card. If anyone wants to speak on this item, please send up a card.
Good evening. My name is Lenore Vacy, and I live at 1421 Via Arco. Views are of utmost importance to residents of Palos Verdes, and particularly to Bob and me. Our view is significantly impacted by the proposed structure at 1520 Paseo La Cresta. The Planning Commission denied the application on July 19th. We request the City Council uphold the Planning Commission's denial. The applicant made no initial attempt to contact us. There was no knock on our door to talk about the project. Only after submitting the plans did the applicant meet jointly with us, the Phams, and the Chins. Yes, 3 longtime residents would be significantly impacted by this structure. The Neighborhood Compatibility Guideline protects views and privacy. The guideline also states, quote, grading can be an effective tool to mitigate the impacts of views, massing, and privacy, end quote. The structure could be lowered 12 to 15 feet. The structure could be reconfigured. The structure could be relocated down the hill on the large 3/4 acre lot. Whatever the alternative, the applicant would retain 100% of his view. He benefits from PVE's parkland in front of him. No one is allowed to build on the parkland. Please affirm the Planning Commission's denial of 1520 Paseo La Cresta. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Vacy. So I don't think I have anyone else. I will go back to the appellant for 5 minutes.
Hi again. First off, there were no threats made of litigation at that meeting. It was a very cordial meeting with everyone. We have not heard anything that specifically disputes what the experts on this project have said. If you reduce the height, by the way, we offered an additional 2 feet of reduction at the present location as a compromise because our experts say that's as far as you can go. You can't go down the hill. You can't reduce it any further because of the stormwater concerns and the dangers to the property. You had your own experts speaking, I think, at a meeting back on September 13th about stormwater drainage and the concerns of properties like this if you don't mitigate. They did not put this house up on that hill to get a great view. They put the house up on the hill at that location because it was the only place that was feasible because of all of these concerns. It's a single-story house, unlike the large 2-story structures that all of these neighbors have. If anyone can tell us how to do this, which no one has been able to do, we're all ears. But this is the reasonable way of handling view impairment. Even if there is a substantial view impairment, the reasonable factor and the ADA trumps it because this is the only location and the only configuration with all of these problems with landslides and the setback issues and everything else that we've mentioned in the appeal. If you have any specific questions for us or suggestions, I'll reserve the rest of our time to have Ms. Siegel answer them, or I can, or Mr. Mandel.
This is your time to present to us. You have a couple minutes left if anyone else was going to use that time.
Their attorney also suggested that you go into closed session to consider this with the city attorney. I have no objection to that if that's the way you want to go on it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Siegel. I'm the founder and principal of Office of Mobile Design. I'm also on faculty at USC in the School of Architecture, where I've taught for almost 25 years. This is a modestly designed house. From the get-go, we were incredibly proactive with the art jury, working with Jim DeRosa and his staff, trying to make sure that we would not impede the views of the neighbors and not do anything that would harm the land. We have a 50-foot setback from the road. The neighbors behind us have a 25-foot setback. There's nowhere else for this house to go. We've conformed to the setbacks, the height limits. I'm only a 20-foot high house. It's a single-story house. I have the ability to do a 2-story house on this property. When part of the determination has to do with these substantial change in the natural cross-lot water drainage. So the deeper you dig a hole into the ground and you sink a house, the more potential there is for water and mud to slide into it. There is no other place for us to go on this house. We've already minimized it to the extent. I definitely disagree with what the neighbors are saying in terms of alteration of the views that we took from their homes. I spent over 100 hours with my staff carefully laying in exactly what their view would look like from their window through our property, and we have that, I believe, on record. Nothing has been manipulated. I am very interested and passionate in the work that I do and working for my client and making sure that these buildings do not blow up and
expand, the potential that they have on these sites. This is a modestly designed home. I could build another 50% a structure on this home. This is 50% below what I'm allowed to build. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Okay, so I'm going to close the questions of the appellant.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry. We're
Ms.
not done
Siegel?
with you. Not done with you. Come back. Sorry. So we're going to ask some questions.
Mr. Pearlson has made several statements about why the house has to be on this specific location on the lot. I want to focus specifically on the accessibility question. He states in a letter that he wrote to us, the proposed design, is the only design and location that will not require the installation of stairs for her, the mother-in-law, I suppose, to be able to obtain access to her living space. And I presume that claim comes from your expertise?
So Mina Mendel, I'm sure you know that the Mendels have owned this property for over 40 years. So she is a resident or intended resident for this property as well. She'll have an elevator. She needs a single level building in order to move freely within her own home. So yes, it is designed exactly for that reason.
I'm sorry, that explains why it's designed as a one level. It does not explain what Mr. Pearlson seems to be saying is that that's the reason that the house is this design, a one level home of this size, of this configuration at this spot. What are is there a fact, other than the one-level design, are there other factors affecting?
Well, yeah, we have a height restriction. We can't exceed the height restriction. We have setbacks. So there was an image that I think Mr. Chen's put up where you actually see the outline of where we can build on.
I'm familiar with setbacks.
Right. We have, in order to get her up to the property, up to that height, we are trying to minimize the amount that we're building. Right, so
in order to get her up to that height.
Right.
I see.
In order to get her
up
into
to that
the
height.
living space.
Because the living space is at the top of the lot.
There's no other place for it to go.
So I'm asking whether or not the position on the lot is related to accessibility. It sounds like that's not the case from what you just said.
It is the case.
Okay. Why would she not be able to access the home if it was at the bottom of the lot?
You can't. There's a 50-foot setback from Paseo La Cresta.
Right, but
I can't build.
The home is further back than 50 feet.
It's right at the 50-foot line.
No.
Yes, it's 53.2, but the foundation of it puts it at 50 feet with the overhangs. So if you look at my site plan, which is up right now.
It's very common for eaves to go over into the setback, but.
Right, but the footprint of the building is at the 50-foot mark. I can't push the house further down the hill. And that was...
you can request a variance.
There's nobody else on that street that has received that variance. Why would the Planning Commission allow Dr. Mendel?
One reason is to maintain neighborhood compatibility. So, for example, the home next door appears to be quite closer to the street.
No, it's not. Have you looked at the drawings?
I have looked at the drawings and I've been.
It might appear to be, but it sits at the same 50-foot setback. You can't exceed the setback. Yeah. I mean, I've been practicing architecture for 25 years in many different cities, and you cannot arbitrarily, even with a variance, push a house down a hill.
Thank you. You've answered my questions.
Does anyone else have a question for Ms. Siegel before I close the public hearing?
I have a question, but I don't know if it's for her or for the lawyers. So I've heard both at the Planning Commission and here statements made that you have full approval by the art jury.
That's correct. Right, we went through that. And one of the conditions that the art jury had us adhere to is altering the roof height. So the reason that we have a 12-foot, we have a 2 to 12 pitch on our roof, that was at the request of the art jury. Originally, I had an inverted butterfly roof where I would have been able to lower that to some degree. I need, in order to hit a 2 to 12 gable roof and walk through the front door, that is ultimately the ridge line.
I bring up the
12 feet.
question because when I read the staff report says only preliminary approval has been provided by the art jury. So I need, so
my
which is it?
understanding as well from the...
Full or preliminary?
According to the PVHA, when I send it out once before it's scheduled for a public hearing, I asked for their comments and they listed it. And at the point they told us it was preliminary approval.
Thank you.
It's been approved to go towards final construction documents. So to my mind, that means that we've been given approval by the art jury to move forward, which was how I was instructed by the art jury to proceed. Go through them first, get their blessing, have the architects, the experts weigh in on it, and then present it to the Planning Commission.
Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing unless you guys have anything down here. Okay, no. All right, so let's close the public hearing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And let's bring it back to council. Who would like to start?
Can I ask a clarifying question to our city attorney? There's been allegations here that this would be violating ADA compliance. Can you please address that and help us understand whether that's valid or not?
Yes, Mr. Council members, I have looked into the ADA issue. I attended the Planning Commission as well, and I looked into that issue as well. Just so the council's aware, the city's code has a reasonable accommodation chapter. It's chapter 17.44. The idea is that if anyone is aware that zoning regulations were going to prohibit, restrict housing accessibility for anyone who's disabled, then they can request an accommodation. My understanding from Cheryl, speaking with Cheryl, was that that was not done. So there's nothing for the city to consider when it comes to an ADA request for accommodation. So that process, just so the council's aware, allows staff to evaluate whether application of the city's regulations would inhibit housing by someone who's disabled, and there's findings that need to be made. So that could have been part of this application. That wasn't done. And so we're taking the applicant at their, face value, not following the city's process. In answer to your question, council member, there's no violation of the ADA by either approving the project or denying the project.
Thank you.
Could I ask the staff to bring up the site plan? I'd like you to, if you can, show us where the setbacks are.
While we're waiting, can I just respond to that just for a moment?
No, sorry, I'm sorry. I'm going to have you sit tight for right now. Thanks. Is that the one you want?
Yes.
This one. Is that?
Can you show us where the front setback is in particular?
Looks like it's page A1.
There we go. It's probably zoomed in too much, maybe.
Yeah.
Why don't you zoom out a little bit so we can kind of get a bigger, maybe, is that better?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Cheryl, again, it's the dotted line there that runs through that set of stairs that are, okay. And so most of the building is not close to the front setback. Is that accurate? Okay. So I will, I'll go ahead and just kick us off. In my long experience, first as on the Planning Commission and on the City Council, I know that vacant lots can be especially difficult to deal with, and the questions are complex. That is not at all the case in this application, and I am not surprised it was denied. There are several findings that I would make. The building height contributes, and the location of the location of the building on the site contributes to substantial privacy impacts to 1425 Via Arco. There are substantial view impacts to 1425 Via Arco. There are substantial view impacts to 1421 Via Arco. The building appears to be substantially out of character. Its location on the lot looks very different from neighboring properties. And very clearly, I do not see any evidence that those impacts have been mitigated to the extent reasonably practicable. The applicant in the letter sent by his attorney seems to lean on the fact that some grading may be in order to overcome this, and I'll draw his attention to the Neighborhood Compatibility Ordinance, which very clearly states that when two or more of these are in conflict with one another, that the Planning Commission effectively has the right to to weigh a couple of these over another. Leaning on just the amount of grading that's required when there are impacts to neighborhood compatibility, privacy, and views is not the right balance. So for me, this is a very clear, I would definitely uphold the denial.
Councilmember Murdoch?
I agree with all that Mayor Pro Tem said. Chair Bob Wade does an excellent job when he starts all his meetings, and he clarifies what the neighborhood compatibility process is. And that is one of collaboration between the resident, the homeowner, property owner, and the neighbors. And to some extent with the Planning Commission as kind of the facilitator, so to speak. And so when I look at this and think about the impacts that it's causing, and I see an unwillingness to consider how to collaborate, that's concerning to me, because that's at heart of the Neighborhood Compatibility Ordinance. And therefore, as I look at this and I listen to the responses to questions that we received, I can't find where everything reasonably possible has been done to mitigate the impacts that this design represents. And therefore, I too would uphold the denial of the appeal.
Councilmember McGowan?
I will agree with my fellow council members here. What concerns me about this situation is that the neighborhood compatibility ordinance, at least from my understanding and talking with the neighbors and so forth, there wasn't dialogue created with them until May or June of this year, before this was brought to the Planning Commission, after it had evidently been a great deal of time spent with the art jury. And the whole concept and whole philosophy of neighborhood compatibility is really to work with the neighborhood in advance as you're designing and laying out the options on that particular parcel or remodel or whatever the case may be. I fail to understand how that process was followed in this situation, and I would be definitely inclined to uphold the Planning Commission's findings.
Councilmember Kemps?
We care a lot about the character of our city. I viewed all the neighboring properties. I respectfully, vehemently disagree about the comments about the pictures. We'll blame it on the technology, not the humans. But visibly, when you stand and look at the properties and consider the impacts, and I don't mean presenting the technology and the potential views from the home and the surrounding homes, I mean simply looking at them, looking at the silhouette from the perspective of the neighboring properties. There are unquestionably view impacts. You could certainly have privacy arguments and pushback there, but you know, I also then went back after viewing the homes and hadn't watched the Planning Commission meeting yet, and I went through and watched it after making some notes, and I note in the recording at 3 hours and 35 minutes, I went through and actually noted, because after reading council's correspondence and seeing quotes from planning commissioners, I was concerned and I wanted to read that too. And so let me add a few for the record that I noted. Commissioner Lazaro, we have the flexibility to orient the home to reduce impact. Grading, orientation, shape, all of this project creates impacts beyond what we would normally allow. There are impacts on view corridors. Commissioner Wade, elevation, positioning, impact from main viewing areas, substantial and significant scenic view impacts, with comments that the east wing, which I believe where the master bedroom is, has the most significant view impact. Comments about many PVE homes protecting views with grading, in particular in this area. When you look at the surrounding neighborhood and homes, and for the record, I don't now, but I used to live a block and a half from this home, so I'm very, very intimately familiar with the neighborhood. And there's grading all over the place, and there's drainage all over the place, and much of it are, you know, in homes that have existed from 1980 and some before. I think Councilmember Roos, Mayor Pro Tem Roos covered it, but I have comments about highest point on the lot. And then to Commissioner Nendick, not keeping the character of the neighborhood. I'm not going to comment on the issues of the setbacks because I'm no expert there, but I've heard those. And then we get into the grading. On the other issues, I'll leave the ADA issues to the lawyers. I'm not one, but it sounds to me like that's a question. And when I say a question, whether or not it's an actual issue because a discretionary permit was not received, the city certainly is not denied, and even if this is upheld, is not denying the applicant/appellant the opportunity to apply to build the single-level home. In fact, I think the Planning Commission attempted towards the end of the meeting to grant a continuance and to be collaborative and to try to sort this out. which, as evidenced by the home that's a few doors away that's under construction, was also done. The question of the art jury approval, I spoke with the Homes Association to verify. We do have a section of our municipal code, which for the record is 15.08.160, also recently affirmed by a local ballot initiative, where the applicant is required to certify on a form approved by the building official that the proposed development complies with CC&Rs and that approval by PVHA, which includes the submittal of full working drawings, is required in order to receive a building permit from the city. So even if not upheld, I'm not sure that that is met. And for those reasons, I agree with my fellow council members.
Okay, very good. Thank you all. So I'm hearing a consensus, so I probably don't need to make a lot of additional points. I will, because I presume that you'll come back and still want to build something on the lot. So for me, and it was hit upon before, but building on a vacant lot is always challenging. And I can't ever recall a project that was approved, a project on a vacant lot that was approved on its first trip to the Planning Commission. So it's just, and I think the Planning Commissioner said, oh, the process is to come back a couple times to tweak, So I think really what stood out for me, and I guess I only mention it as, assuming you're going to still want to do something with your lot, is that it was, what really stood out for me is if you're going to build on an empty lot, the first thing you do is knock on all the neighbors' doors and say, hey, I know you've been enjoying this empty lot here for 40 years, but now we're going to build on it and we have a right to build on it, but how's that going to look for you and what's that going to do for you? You really have to have that collaboration because frankly, if you have the support of your neighbors, it moves through the process. And if you're battling, it doesn't move through the process. So, I mean, I think that was probably a misstep at the very beginning. And everybody, I don't, and you kind of mentioned, well, none of the commissioners told us what to do. Well, it's not the planning commissioner's job to design projects. And it's not their job to, especially not on the fly in the middle of a meeting. That's your job. And so, I think that they tried to say, everybody's kind of done the quotes, it's in the wrong place on the lot. You need to grade down, move the garage down to take away the mass for the neighbors. Instead you took kind of the highest spot and plopped a house on the highest spot. And that doesn't work for the neighbors. So I think I'm hearing a consensus. Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I'm ready to make a motion.
Oh, please.
I move that we approve City Resolution Number R22, denying the appeal and upholding the Planning Commission decision to deny neighborhood compatibility and grading applications at 1520 Paseo La Cresta.
I will second that, but can I make one more comment?
Please.
One of the things that I find kind of troubling is that some of the presentation that we received seemed to impugn the credentials of the Planning Commission as not being experts in the field, or that we as council members are not experts, and all of that is true. And it's true of all planning commissions and city councils, and that's not our role. But it really strains credulity to say that the only design that can accommodate accessibility is this design. I have been in thousands of buildings that are accessible to people who have all kinds of limitations. And I think that as you consider another application, you should very carefully consider your approach, because obviously many of these claims that you have made about drainage, location on the lot, accessibility, they are false on their face. And that, I think, has led you in the wrong direction here.
Any other discussion before we vote? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, no. Okay, so motion carries. Thank you. All right. So we only have 2 more items. Forge ahead, or you guys want to break?
Yeah, let's go for
Keep
it.
moving? Okay. So are you okay with that? On this side, I only looked that way. 5 minutes? Okay, sorry.
Or does she
People
want-
at this end of the table would like a break, so
All right,
we're going to
give them
go,
five.
let's take 10 minutes.
Take 10.
Thanks, sorry, we'll be back.
Sorry.
I didn't realize I only looked one way. I was like, oh, wait, these guys might want to. Okay. Okay, we are back. So let's go to item number 17. Well, I'm not going to read the whole thing. That's very long. Receive and file a report from the Director of City Support Services and the Information Technology Managed Services Provider.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to introduce our essentially our finance director, IT director, to introduce this item, but I want to let everyone know that he's on the telephone. Stephen will be, so I'm going to hold this up to the microphone. I think we'll be okay with hearing everything, but if everyone can speak into the microphones, it will be helpful for him to hear a little easier that way. This is a good practice for any vacation you might take to another remote area and you'd like to dial in. We're practicing that tonight, so bear with us. And we also have representatives of Forum Infotech here tonight as well. Stephen, go ahead.
Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and members of the City Council, we have for you tonight the first of a series of IT-related items. As the first, this item addresses the highest risk and greatest need for the city. In fiscal year 2021, as a result of an RFP process, the city changed its IT managed services provider for the first time in 8 years. As the new provider, Forum Infotech, FIT, worked through its onboarding process, it quickly became apparent that the city's IT environment had been allowed to slip well below industry standards. Standard documentation that was expected to be provided during the onboarding process was found to be incomplete, inaccurate, or in some cases non-existent. FIT invested a significant amount of time to properly document the city's IT environment, infrastructure, and equipment. During this onboarding process, FIT started to assess the city's needs so as to develop an IT strategic plan, which is called for in the RFP. At the top of the list of the cities was the city's servers, both due to their age and their location within City Hall. Both servers are older models. One is dated beyond the ability to procure parts for it should there be a failure. Both servers are limited in available storage space to the point that they are consistently having to be worked on to keep them operating. In cooperative effort between the city, staff, FIT, and the Council Ad Hoc Committee, various alternatives were researched and developed for review. The alternatives looked at included multiple relocation scenarios within the building, and maybe outside the building and off-site locations, to include a cloud migration. We also looked at relocating the water and sewer infrastructure within the current server room. The result of this work is a recommendation that's contained in tonight's item, that the city move its server capacity to an off-site location and lease server equipment over the next few years. I will now turn this presentation over to Biren Shukla from FIT, who is here tonight to answer any questions the council may have regarding the city's IT environment, as well as information contained within this staff report.
Hello everyone, my name is Biren Shukla and I am from Forum Infotech. I am the president and CEO, and with me I have Eric Chambers. I should probably that's my introduction, and Honorable Madam Mayor and Honorable Council members and staff members and Chief Best, it's my honor to be here and answer any questions you may have in regards to the recommendations we have made. I will start off. I worked very closely with Steve and also ex-mayor Kemps. Or how do you say this?
Ex-mayor. Does that mean I'm fired?
I don't even. Oh yes, I'm sorry. I mean, Councilmember Kemp. Sorry, this is not something I do day in day out. So you're
doing a great
job.
job.
I'm nervous. I apologize. But I'm here to answer any questions, and maybe I should just take questions first rather than going on a monologue.
And I also want to take an opportunity in case any of the members of the ad hoc committee would like to make a comment about some of the meetings and the work. So that's Mayor Pro Tem Roos, Councilmember Kemps.
Why don't you guys take us through the work that you guys did?
Me first or you first?
You can probably go into the details. I will just say this, that this is actually the first thing that I ever did, worked on in my effort, in my contribution to the city. When I was chair of the Technology Advisory Committee, it was something that's been very important to me, and I'm very hopeful and glad that we're going to do something about it finally. So,
How many years ago?
5.
Okay, too bad.
Yeah, watch this as long as we're having enjoyable experiences. When an election was going on and I hadn't been elected yet, I stood at that podium where he's standing and I said to the city council, I'm desperately concerned about the room downstairs. If there's anything I can do to help, let me know.
And then as I recall, I had never met you before, and I sent you an email because I was watching that meeting, and then we met.
There you go.
And I do believe it was at coffee after that if you asked me if I was crazy, but we'll move on. Okay, so the summary is this. We the city, have equipment that is located downstairs in a, I'm going to put it in quotes, server room. And it's in quotes because I'm in the technology industry and nobody with their right mind would refer to that as a server room. It is a downstairs room in a basement. We will not blame whoever chose that location. There, bless you. There's one more. There it is. Got the count right? It's just unacceptable what's going on down there. We have risk to public safety equipment, risk to regular networking equipment. We need to start working on pulling things out of there that we can pull out of there. The challenge with what's there is much of it is aged. Both physical hardware, attachments to that physical hardware, as well as software and software versions. Biren, thank you to your firm for onboarding and application version review and all the beginning work that you did to pull together, I didn't use the word, what do we actually have here? And, to start to document that. Coincidentally, a couple years back, the South Bay Council of Governments worked with American Dark Fiber to put in a dedicated connection for most or all of the South Bay cities that connects on a fiber circuit and provides high-speed access to a dedicated facility in El Segundo. The city of El Segundo actually hosts much or all of their equipment there, obviously much more than we have or need. And the benefit to that is we can get to it more quickly and with less latency, meaning the speed with which the information goes round trip, than we historically could with a regular internet connection. So what this does is it takes advantage of that facility. It increases the size of our existing circuit by plus or minus, because it's not exact 10 times. John's staring at me in the front row, so I'm not going to dare get exactly right on an engineering calculation. So it provides high-speed access to that facility. And in a co-location facility, you have high availability power, air conditioning, racks, networking equipment, things that if we were to try to build here, forget the building and the age of the building, even if we had a decent room, we'd drop $500,000 before we blinked to try and build that. And instead of doing that, we have the opportunity with the connection to just go right into that space and share a little piece of it and then rent from them equipment that's available to us so that our provider can begin to migrate critical applications into that facility and make our city and its applications on behalf of our residents safer. That's the least technical way that I can describe it.
Okay. Questions for the ad hoc, or? Can I call you Biren?
Yep, you can.
Okay, or Biren.
No, I just appreciate the work the ad hoc has done and that our IT managed services group has done. Not my area of specialty, in spite of having worked for Accenture for many years. So I just appreciate that we've got the talent and the partnership here to do what we need to do to make sure that we're safeguarding our information.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? How quickly can this migration take place?
Great question. So that was addressed in the staff report, but one of the things, so I'll break down the entire process. The first step is for Race Communications to do the maintenance and get the circuit upgraded, so to speak, from 1 gigabits to 10 gigabits. And that is already scheduled. I just saw an email come through that was signed already. So we had worked with them, got the quote, and we are already paying. I think the city's already paying $1,000, and the new circuit was going to cost $2,000 something. So I think once that is done, then the next step is to work with the Equinix provider, right? Once that is approved, the data center provider, and once they give us the server, physically the server, then we think we can accomplish this before the end of the year, and it's already detailed in the plan.
The end of this calendar year?
Yep, absolutely.
Like December 31, 2022. That's phenomenal.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the reason that can be done is because, A, the circuit's already there, it's already provisioned, it's already up, the co-location facility is already there. So all they have to do is just
flip the switch.
Yeah, a little more than flip the switch. They have to provision the circuit and do a little bit more, but yeah.
I'm sorry, I do have a question. So my understanding is from my earlier time working with South Bay Cities, COG, that they had done all this fiber network stuff and we were part of that. Does this mean that we're moving away from that?
No. No. So we're taking advantage of the fact that we subscribe to that at a low level, right? And now we're saying, okay, in addition to just accessing the internet with a 1 gig connection, we're actually going to take information that's here that if I'm on this computer and it goes to my wireless access point and I go to look at an application, if I'm staff, it goes down the hall or down to the bottom basement of the building, gets the information across an internal switch and gives it to me very quickly, right? If I put that same stuff, that same application and data, and I move it across the internet or into a co-location facility, and I have a very thin pipe. Imagine trying to take a fire hydrant full of water and shove it down a hose, right? So what this effectively is doing is increasing the size of that hose to what can actually fit in that fire hydrant so that enough water can go quickly enough between here and El Segundo.
So we don't affect kind of that response time?
Correct. Okay. And latency is the word, yes. And more specifically, to answer your question, we are utilizing the South Bay COG provision circuit. American Dark Fiber installed it, and Race Communications implements and manages it. That's why there's 2 vendor names.
And does it also mean that the security is, and it's going to be backed up to another location in case there's some disaster of some nature in El Segundo?
Can you address that?
Yes, I can 100%. Great question, by the way. So even though the servers are going to leave the building, or the applications or the data is going to leave this building and moved to the co-location, we are still leaving the backup equipment here on premise, and it can back up all those servers in Equinix over the wire, and we already have an off-site backup already built in. So not only do we take a backup of the entire infrastructure on-site for quick recovery in case something happens, hardware failure, but we can also, worst case scenario, recover things from the cloud. Another off-site data center.
Does this increase or decrease our risk for being hacked in any of our systems or be held hostage?
I would say that's another great question. I think that it decreases the risk a little bit. You are on better hardware, right? Better hardware, newer operating system. Right now, you are running on aging hardware, no hardware warranty. Well, actually, we did get hardware warranty as a stopgap measure. So if if the parts, we needed to secure parts, we could get them. I would say that security is a whole different discussion we need to have, and the city needs to make significant investments in cybersecurity. That is the next thing that I'm going to be coming back to the council and actually to the tech committee and making a very detailed recommendation analysis after I've done all kind of external vulnerability testing, internal, and that's a whole separate discussion. But I would say that yeah, it's somewhat more secure to be in a data center. But I wanted to address the fact that we are not able to move all the servers from the downstairs data center. It's very important that the staff understands that this is the first step, the very first step we are taking towards optimizing the entire IT infrastructure. And this is the most cost-effective step we found to take. It's a step in the right direction. So there's still a lot. We're looking at application by application. We're going down the list. For example, we have an application called Spillman, which is used by the police department to do searches and such. We've talked to the vendor, Motorola. They are not quite cloud ready. So we have an alternative to move that one piece to AWS or any public cloud infrastructure.
Please clarify the acronyms.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can take that one application and move it to a public, a facility like Equinix, a provider like Equinix that provides you servers for rent by the hour, and we can do that. So those are the types of things we are gonna recommend.
Are we going to be moving the 911 system from this building and put it up there, or how does that work? Maybe, Tony, you're better equipped.
Yeah, so right now the state has it's called Next Gen 911, and we started that project about 1.5 years ago, and we already moved the new Next Gen 911 equipment from the existing server room to a new location within the building that meets all their requirements. So we wouldn't be moving any 911 equipment off-site.
So we're a lot safer now than we were 1.5 years or 2 years ago.
When the Next Gen 911 system goes online with the state, then we will be, yes.
Okay.
To specifically answer your question, making operating systems current, patching them completely, closing off what doesn't need to access them in and out of those systems, regardless of where they're located, improves security.
Thank you.
The fact that you move those servers to Equinix or leave them here doesn't in and of itself increase security or protect you from ransomware or being hacked in and of itself and by itself. Getting it out of here and having applications running in a secure environment, however, likely will give you greater uptime and will protect you from failure in a room that is unacceptable.
Good. Good discussion. Thank you. Let's see. So we have a couple things we need to approve here, right? 5 points, 4 points. Someone like to make a motion?
Thank you, Councilmember Kims, for all the extra help.
No problem.
Thank you.
So
Done it a couple times.
I move that we authorize the city manager to enter into a 3-year contract with Equinix for the rental of one server with a maximum contract amount of $38,775. That we authorize the city manager to replace the existing contract with a 3-year contract with Race Communications for access to a 10 gigabyte fiber ring circuit with a maximum contract amount of $99,000. To authorize a one-time contract amendment of $15,000 for FIT to implement the transition from our on-site server room to the Equinix co-location facility, and to adopt the resolution for an increase in appropriations in the general fund for IT contractual services in an amount not to exceed $42,195 to initiate and execute the movement of city server capabilities to the Equinix co-location facility and modify the existing contract with Race Communications.
I'll second that.
Great. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No? Okay, motion passes. Thank you for your
Great.
work. Thank you for being here and for
Thank you.
staying
It's an
to
honor.
the end.
It's an honor. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you all, and I'll be back soon.
Yeah, we look forward to working with you, and bye, Stephen. I guess did Stephen hang up? And thank you, staff, and thanks, Ad Hoc, for all your work. Thanks, you guys. Okay, item number 18. Discussion and direction regarding consideration of establishing an ordinance to criminalize the unlawful possession of catalytic converters. And I believe Captain Halenga is doing the staff report.
All right, good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. For your review and consideration tonight is the merits of a new ordinance to criminalize the unlawful possession of catalytic converters. Criminals have been incentivized to steal these external vehicle components due to their high value in recycling. When criminals are caught even with several catalytic converters in their possession, which police officers know don't necessarily belong to them, we can arrest them, and we have arrested them, but there are certain loopholes that prevent the prosecution of these offenses. Specifically, if we cannot identify one catalytic converter and link that to a specific victim, we can't have a testimony against that it's actually stolen. I'd like to bring to your attention that last Sunday, Governor Newsom announced that he signed legislation to make it illegal for recyclers to buy converters from anyone other than the legal owner. The new law created penalties for buyers who fail to certify that a catalytic converter was not stolen. They also require a traceable method of payment for the catalytic converters and more stringent record keeping for these businesses. The proposed PVE ordinance would make it a misdemeanor to unlawfully possess a catalytic converter that's not attached to the car without valid documentation or other proof of rightful possession. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
City Manager, did you have anything to add to that, or what's the process here?
I would only add that the staff report also notes that there are a number of cities in Southern California in particular that have adopted similar ordinances in really recent months as this became more of a problem. And it is another tool for the police department to help deter thefts in this space. And from a procedural process, we're interested in your feedback on the conceptual ordinance, which is attached, and if this is something that the council is supportive of, we're prepared to bring this back for a first reading at your next council meeting.
Is this consistent with what the other South Bay cities have been emailing us about, this type of an ordinance?
Yes, sir. Redondo Beach is the only South Bay city that I know of that has already enacted an ordinance, but there are other cities in the state that have done similar things.
I thought there had been other South Bay cities that were considering such an ordinance.
Yes, sir. Redondo Beach, I believe, is the only one that has actually enacted it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Well, I think it's great that you have brought this to us. I know we got that one email, it might have come from Redondo, I can't remember, talking about putting something in place. And so I commend you for seeing that and moving on this. We do know that theft of catalytic converters is an ongoing problem. And for those who spend time on Nextdoor, you can read posts of people talking about that. So thank you for doing that. And, I read the draft and I thought it looked good. The one question I do have is, historically, the police department has put on a catalytic converter etching event, I guess you call it. And do you have any more of those on the schedule, or are you planning on doing any? We got ours etched, and then it died, and literally 2 months later, and we had to replace it.
Yes, ma'am. We've done 2 of those so far, and currently we don't have any scheduled, but I think it would be a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
Did you replace it with a legal one?
Yeah, were you able to recycle it? Because it had.
I was walking in the back alleys.
Any other comments?
I think very supportive of moving forward with this.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to make a lot of sense to do it. Yep. So I don't know that you actually need, just direction to bring it back, right?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is not set for approval, so if there's a consensus among the council, staff will bring it back for approval at a future meeting.
Yep. In fact, I don't even think I need a motion for that, right? No. Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Good report. Good ordinance. Okay, so Mayor and council member reports. Councilmember McGowan.
I just have 2 items I'll report on. I was participating in a South Bay Sanitation meeting a week or so ago, and they did discuss the spill that we had in our particular area down along Malaga Creek and that shut down Rat Beach. And I guess at this moment, I know at the time of the meeting, the beach had not been opened by the health department as I understood it, but I don't know if it's been since remedied. Not that it makes an issue here tonight, but I was very supportive of the fact that the sanitation department and all the crews worked very quickly to try to remediate the situation as fast as possible. And the other thing I'll just report on is I'm planning to attend the JPIA conference next week, having to do with risk mitigation and seismic issues and other things, which will be a 2.5-day conference.
Oh, good. Cool. Councilmember Kemps.
I'm quiet tonight. I have no additions.
All right. Councilmember Murdoch.
So I would like to acknowledge all the emails that we received today regarding concerns from parents on the issue of lighting at PV High School. I don't know where that stands right now, but I just wanted to acknowledge that we heard you, and we're doing everything we can. So I just needed to say that. I'm going to let you talk about,
Sure.
Okay. And then the one-time revenue and general fund operating surplus policy ad hoc met, and we have another meeting on October 3rd. And my guess is we'll probably, the FAC will probably be reviewing recommendations on that at their next FAC meeting. So those are my comments, and then I do have a few agenda items, but I'll wait till we get to that.
Okay.
Last time we were here, I told you guys that I had solved all the parking problems at the tennis club, and I think everyone...
How's that going so far?
Well, since our last meeting, I believe that they shared with everyone up here the agreement that they came to, so I think that bodes well for future collaboration between these two neighbors, and I was pleased with that outcome. Dawn and I have been very busy in our ad hoc regarding La Venta. We've met independently and reviewed the last draft ordinance and reviewed sort of the differences in our respective opinions on that language. We then had a meeting with the owner of La Venta and Meg and got some feedback from them. We've met with a couple of neighbors. We're planning to continue and expand that outreach. We're moving quickly, but there's a lot of stakeholders here. What am I missing?
I guess the only other point is, we're going to look, Mark, maybe to you to help us figure out what's the best way to reach out to the surrounding neighbors so that we can get to them before things take too long.
Yep. So we're moving quickly, but we want to be thorough, so.
When would you guess you're going to bring something back?
What did we say? We were saying maybe in November?
That was our original thought, but the list of people that want to talk to us has expanded significantly, so.
Okay.
It's more important to get it right than it is
for sure.
And,
For sure.
and, the site, the site is able to operate right now, so, but we're going to move quickly, but also try to get it right.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Is that?
I think that's it.
Updates?
Yeah.
Okay. So so last weekend was the last of the Lunada Bay Park concerts. We had the Eagles tribute band. And I gave a few words at that and was able to happy to welcome to the community the new Lunada Kitchen, which is a little outdoor restaurant area, that outdoor patio that we built quite a long time ago, associated with the Lunada Bay Market and Deli. So that's open, and, encourage everybody to eat and shop locally if you can. So let's morph into, trying to see if I had anything else. I think that's it. So I actually was interviewed by Live at 205 at PV High last week to talk about what is an ordinance. So I was like, oh, okay. So that was fun. So I'll just morph into like future agenda items. So I guess maybe for staff to jot down. But I have kind of three things that I'm wondering where they are and kind of what's happened to them. But our housing element and our safety element. Seems like it's been a long time since we've had an update on those. And then the other thing is, we had that, we were awarded that grant to renovate Farnham Martin Park. I've never heard anything about that either. So I'd love to have some reports, at future council meetings on those three items. I'd love to have an update. Those are my requests. Councilmember McGowan? Future agenda items?
Not that come to mind at the moment.
Okay, Councilmember Kemps?
We had one with a group of residents that were concerned about, I'll call it a homeless issue in the Montemalaga area, but specifically potentially seeking legal opinion and discussion around homelessness next to and circa schools. Obviously, there are limitations relative to Boise and other issues that we're well aware of. But if we can explore what other cities have done relative to proximity to schools, camping, very high fire zone, et cetera, that's something that we should probably take up because there's an ongoing concern. It's been going on for a while.
Yeah, no, that's good.
So when we approved our budget, one of the items in the motion was for staff to provide an aging schedule of our special funds by the end of September. So here we are, and I would just like some clarity on when we might expect to see that so we can make sure we're managing our funds proactively rather than facing what we did with Prop C and having to scurry before they expired. My second item is, this budget and the last budget, council identified money to be used on the parklands, and it's just sitting there, and meanwhile residents are begging us to take care of the trees and the open spaces and fire abatement, and we're heading into prime tree trimming season. It starts in October or November for pines and eucalyptus. I know Carl created his list. It was in one of the budget meetings that we didn't get a chance to review, so I think it's time that council sees that so we can move on this before we end up out of season for tree trimming. And then my third item would be just what we discussed earlier today is, seeing a modified fee schedule, at least for planning and building, so that we're incorporating the contractor rates. And then, I think we're probably in a position down the road to also be looking at public works and some of the other areas.
I'm good.
Is that a request?
Not sure.
Okay. So I think if, did you have any further, city manager, anything else that you wanted to add to our comments here?
Not tonight.
Not tonight? Okay, well then with that, thank you all for your participation and members of the public who I'm sure are home watching now. But thank you everyone, and we are adjourned to October 11th. Thank you.